All right, my friends. Welcome to the new week, Monday. We're in the Old Testament book of Proverbs, Proverbs 27. We should be able to conclude this week. I'm a little iffy on Friday, only because I don't know how I want to handle that last chapter because it's got some really important stuff in it. And so I'll be praying on that. But today we're in chapter 27. All right, and we have 27 wisdoms to unpack with the last 1 2 3 4 5 23 through 27 are all kind of about one subject, so we see some linkages here. What's really fascinating is on this one we're going to see a consistent theme about humbleness and what hard work pays off. Hard work will lead to blessings. All right, because we live in a world where unfortunately a lot of people just don't want hard work. you we have a generation that thinks I went to college, so now I should be an executive because you told me my whole life college was the gateway to success. You didn't tell me there was a point after college and a point of success where I would have to work. And so we have a lot of people just don't want to work hard or just don't know how, or it's never been shown to them. Amen. So let's do quick roll call. Good morning, Aaron. Good morning, Cheryl. Good morning, Brian. Good morning, Lorraine, and good morning, Audrey. And so, big week this week. So let's go ahead and get started. Slurping coffee with Jesus. All right. Again, Proverbs, book of Proverbs, Old Testament, chapter 27, verse 1. Do not boast about tomorrow, for you do not know what a day may bring. Now, Jesus will spend quite a bit of time talking about anxiety, worry. Do not worry. This is a subset to that. This is the foundation, candidly. You can't control tomorrow. Imagine if you could find out what was going to happen tomorrow. I think that would be horrible. Knowing that something's coming and probably nothing you can do would prevent that or change that. And so you would end up being in these weird conflicts within yourself, the way you live, to change tomorrow. And tomorrow has so many things that influence that we never consider. We think it's just about us and tomorrow. But what we have to remember is that every tomorrow becomes today. And when it becomes today, we live it. And that is the way things are supposed to be. But there's a humble perspective here, too, about not knowing what's happening tomorrow and living today for the Lord. Now, worldly people, secular people say, I'm going to live today for me. Tomorrow's not promised. Well, there's truth to that. But with tomorrow not promised, what we do have promised as believers, as followers of Christ, is eternal salvation. Morning, Amy. Amen. And so something to consider. Now, verse 2, let someone else praise you and not your own mouth, an outsider and not your own lips. Again, humbleness. It would be, and even in this, consider how many times people will, think about politics. You pay people to praise you. You pay people to write ads about you. You pay people to tell people, how good you are. In the end, let your testimony be your testimony. Humble. One of the great sins, if not the greatest sin in the scriptures, is pride. We're going to talk about that here in a bit too. And so what's the opposite of pride? Humility. All right. And so if God detests pride, then he loves humility. Now, verse 3, stone is heavy and sand a burden, but a fool's provocation is heavier than both. Now, this word provocation is in the NIV could mean one of two things. And so one, a fool will always push your buttons. If you're being provoked by a fool, they're fools. They just know, the sheer foolishness of their words will sometimes drive a wise person mad. But what we're also talking about here, and the more likely of the two scenarios, is that because we start off with sand is heavy, or a stone is heavy, sand is a burden, but a fool's anger is heavier than both. All right. When a fool decides that they're going to be mad, when a fool lets go with their emotion and decides to rail, there's no controlling it. There's no thing put. Yeah, Audrey, wrath. There's no put to it. And wrath's like a better word than just anger. I can be angry. I stump my toe. But if you cut me off in traffic, I might be wrathful and decide to run you, follow you and put other people at risk. and act foolish. See the difference? Now, in this same theme, anger is cruel and fury overwhelming, but who can stand before jealousy? All right. Anger is cruel. What does that mean? It's cruel to the person who's angry as much as it is to the person who's using anger to be cruel. And fury is overwhelming. That's the next level up from anger. That's when, um, I can to this day remember my very first fight. I can remember the decision to let go of candidly the thinking rational person in me. I can remember letting go and letting this thing, wrath, fury, come out. And then the other piece to hear, if those are bad, but who can stand? Those are really bad, but who can stand before jealousy? My wife and I, as I've shared, we've been married. Well, we had 39th anniversary was Friday, but we had some very tough. Our first 3 decades were just under third. 28 years were pretty rough, and I can remember the power of jealousy and the fact that it controlled me and the fact that I hated it beyond everything else in my life. I hated that somebody could control me through jealousy. And it wasn't that they controlled me, it was that jealousy controlled me. I controlled myself. I created my own cage. And that led to anger and that led to fury. All right. And so these are really things to think about with this. And it's the cause and effect of these things. Now, verse 6, and again, think about these are written really well as from a nesting perspective or from a telling the narrative. Verse 6, wounds from a friend can be trusted, but an enemy multiplies kisses. All right. So we're talking about true friends who come alongside you and say, hey, listen, you're being stupid. Or they wound you inadvertently because your friendship has made you overly familiar to the point where in just a moment of poor timing, they say something that wounds you. All right. But they're your friend and they didn't do it deliberately. It hurts. It doesn't take this, it takes the sting away, but not the pain. But an enemy will be deceitful and they'll come at you and they'll kiss you and they'll say good things and they'll work hard to be your frenemy, to get inside your wire where they can then hurt you. All right. So there's a difference between a friend that and you need wisdom to discern these two differences. Verse 7, one who is full loathes honey from the comb, but to the hungry, even what is bitter tastes sweet. All right. So on this comes to fulfillment. All right. And so when you're filled, again, I've talked, I'm a big guy. I've been a heavy guy. I've been a fat guy, candidly. And there's been times where I just couldn't get enough to eat of something that I liked, to the point where I deliberately would eat. I can remember Thanksgivings this way, where I would eat until I was physically uncomfortable or even in pain. All right. So there's the physical side, there's the food example, but there's a danger to this as well in other things. And so one of the things that it does is it tends to make us, that's the obvious positive side. But somebody who thinks they're spiritually satisfied will then stay at this level. And that's not where God intends us. He continues us to grow. So there's a warning in this on the other side of the same coin. One is, hey, listen, don't be gluttonous, don't keep going. But the other thing is you've got to be aware that you have to keep seeking things. We don't define success, God does. And so this is one of those proverbs that's really deep and can reflect multiple positions or seasons in our life. All right. I know that I've read the Bible, so I'm good. I never have to read it again. Would be a great example. All right. You got to stay in the word. You got to keep in it. And so, no, that was verse 7, Audrey. Verse 8, like a bird that flees its nest is anyone who flees from home. And so when we leave our home like a bird, we're leaving our safety, we're leaving our security, we're leaving a place that we built, a place that we hopefully had an opportunity to design or to personalize. And when we go into the world, think about what we do with our children or we as children when we finally went out into the world. I remember Karen and I's first apartment. She got it while I was still in high school, and it was a dangerous place looking back today. And I wouldn't let her leave or come without me being outside. Even as a young guy, I knew that, but we didn't know how bad it was because we'd never experienced those kind of things. And so we left home and to start a new home to cleave to one another. Amen. Verse 9, perfume and incense bring joy to the heart, and the pleasantness of a friend springs from the heartfelt advice. And so it starts out with this beautiful, obvious sentiment, people that smell nice, that smells nice, you might remember them. I never particularly cared for the smell, but I always laugh because I think of High Karate cologne in the 70s. I think it was what was that cosmetic company? Avon. I think they sold it. And I remember my grandfather always smelled like it, when he wanted to gussy up and go to church or go out to dinner. I can remember the smell to this day. I bought a candle a couple weeks ago from the Yankee Candle outlet because when I smelled it, I was looking for Christmas scents. It smelled like my grandmother. It was the weirdest thing in the world. And there was only one, or I would have bought one for my brothers as well and my children. But it smelled just like my grandmother. And so scents smell good. But think about the power of that with a friend. Back to a friend. We saw up above that a friend's, where was it? Wounds from a friend can be trusted. But here we are, that the advice from a friend, all right, springs, and it just makes one feel good that you have a friend that you can trust, a friend that you can walk with, a friend that you can share, be vulnerable, a friend that has your best interest when they're taking you to task. Because in the end, you want to be taken to task. You want them to help protect you. All right. And that usually starts at the home, by the way. Verse 10, do not forsake your friend or a friend of your family, and do not go to your relative's house when disaster strikes you. Better a neighbor nearby than a relative far away. This is a really mixed proverb, wisdom. And so, don't forsake your friends. I'm an introvert. Karen and I were just having a discussion yesterday. I'm not a good friend in that. And what I mean by that is I don't have the skill to reach out and stay connected to people. It's so easy for me to just not retreat. I'm not retreating for anything, but I just get caught in my own head, my own comfort zone. And so I've made so many friends over the years and then just lost touch. And it's my fault. And I hate that. But nonetheless, if a friend calls, I'm there. You know what I mean? And so we have to be aware we don't forsake the friends. And when you do inadvertently, like I do, you feel it. You really do. You feel it. And so you don't forsake them or the friend of your family. Now, what's interesting is, given all the disasters right now, you don't rush to a relative's house just because they're a relative in a time of disaster. That's what friends are for. And so we see this consistent theme of friends. It's better than a neighbor nearby than a relative far away, because when you leave your home, as we said a moment ago in a previous verse, you leave your safety and your security. And so you may end up going into more harm's way or bringing harm to your relative. But if your neighbor's nearby, but more importantly, your friend, that's a safer place to go. It's a relationship. It's a second home. It's a home away from home. Now, we talked about Friday that you don't overstay your welcome either. All right. And so there's a balance to this, a wisdom and a discernment. That's what I love about the Proverbs. It's not a black and white. There are circumstances, there are gray areas, and it calls them out. Now, be wise, my son, and bring joy to my heart, that I can answer anyone who treats me with contempt. And so we've seen this consistent thread, the father telling the child, in this case, the son, hey, listen, be wise, make me proud. All right. And let me know that you're good. Again, our children will leave home. They will leave safety and security. And we as parents have the obligation to prepare them for that day, to prepare them to stand on their own, to give them the wisdom, to again, spiritually prepare them for the world, to prepare their faith so that Christ is their foundation. The prudent see danger and take refuge, but the simple keep going and pay the penalty. So we've seen this one as a consistent proverb, a consistent wisdom. So the wisdom provides discernment that allows us to see the things that are bad for us, to see the traps that are laid out. But the foolish, they just wander along, oblivious to it, either overtly by design, by choice, or out of ignorance. And oh, ow, that hurt. And they go, oh, that hurt. And they just keep on moving without ever learning from it. Remember, wisdom is learning knowledge and then applying that knowledge to your life. Verse 13, we got a financial truth here. Take the garment of one who puts up security for a stranger, hold it in pledge if it is done for an outsider. So this is somebody making a loan to a stranger as an individual, not a business. All right, because that stranger can't get a loan from people who actually do this. So there's a risk there for that reason. People who do this for a living have deemed that person not worth the risk of giving them a loan, that the propensity for them to pay it back is almost non-existent, if not existent. And so we're told to hold that cloak. We're told to hold that security, to remind them of that oath. All right. And so it's a financial understanding here. Wisdom, even in finances. One of the places that many of us, for whatever reason, just don't apply wisdom or discipline. Now, if anyone loudly blesses their neighbor or calls out to their neighbor early in the morning, it will be taken as a curse. All right. We're talking about a hypocrite. We're talking about the neighbor who's, outside, because they heard a noise, but then they make it sound like they're just saying, hey, neighbor, you have a good day at work as you leave. And they're yelling it so everybody hears. But everybody knows that this neighbor, morning, Chantel, that this neighbor is simply out there just poking their nose in places it doesn't belong. All right. And so they're just trying to ingratiate themselves. They're hypocrites. They're deceivers. And we got this great one again. A quarrelsome wife is like the dripping of a leaky roof in a rainstorm. Restraining her is like restraining the wind or grasping oil with the hand. All right. And so, what a description about an unhappy spouse in the house. All right. And we've seen earlier verses. Good morning, Carrie. We've seen earlier verses where, or a proverb consistently, it says, better to sleep on the corner of your roof than in a house with a quarrelsome wife. Corner of the roof where you could roll right off the roof of your house. You get this little segment on the roof. All right. And so what is it? Happy wife, happy life. I don't personally like that because it should be both ways. So I like happy spouse, happy house. And so, we've got to be mindful that we collectively, the husband and the wife, we own the temperament together of the house, the mood of the house, the atmosphere of the house. But this is pretty descriptive stuff. It made me chuckle when I read it. All right. And then here's the popular one, verse 17, as iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. Now we saw this in the earlier verses with the friends, with the either the inadvertent wound or the deliberate rebuke and correction from friend to friend. Iron sharpens iron, but you need to know where the other iron is. And so, when iron scrapes, when you're scraping off the all the excess material, you're creating edges. All right. Iron sharpens iron. It's why we have to be vulnerable. It's why we have to be in community. We have to be in fellowship with one another. We have to be able to take rebuke. We don't like it. No one. I hate being corrected. But nonetheless, we have to be able to accept it in order to learn, to mature, and to grow. It's part of God's justification and sanctification in our lives. And so he's going to correct us. And if we can't take somebody else correcting us, how are we going to take God correcting us? The ultimate iron sharpening iron. Amen. The one who guards a fig tree will eat its fruit, and whoever protects their master will be honored. So we're going to start to see the work theme in this now. So we saw friendship, we saw humility, we've seen the power of friendship, the need for friendship. And now we're going to see work. All right. So the one who guards a fig tree will eat its fruit. Well, that's fair. You've protected it from, insects, animals, thieves, bad weather, whatever it is. Your job was to keep the fig tree growing. So you bet that you get to get some of its fruit. Whoever protects their master will be honored. Your job is to protect your master, your boss, so on and so forth. My clients are my number one, and I always tell them that, my job is to take care of you. What do you need? I don't always agree with what they need, but they decide what they need, not me. I can simply say, hey, listen, I don't recommend this course of action. And then, 9 out of 10 times they may accept that advice, but on the 10th, or if it's more, and that's what they want, that's what they pay me to do, then I'll execute that. Let's do this. Can we do these things to make sure you're successful? All right. That's my job, is to take care of him. And they in turn take care of me, give me good contract reviews, things like that, give me more work, as it should be. Good hard work will bring success as God deems it, but more importantly, it'll satisfy your soul. Hard work pays off. Hard work in and of itself is a blessing. All right. As water reflects the face, so one's life reflects the heart. And so I see that, we see our face in water, in a mirror, still water, but it's our heart that gets reflected over the course of our life. You can see somebody and look back years later and say, I don't know how I didn't see who they really were early. It could be for the better, or it could be for the worse. But nonetheless, over time, your heart will be exposed. We will see others' hearts as well as have our own exposed. And we need to understand that. Now, this one I think hit me the most out of these. I don't know why. Death, verse 20. Death and destruction are never satisfied, and neither are human eyes. And so death and destruction, sin never stops. Sin will spread until it has nothing else to eat. There's no just getting a little sin. This is why tolerance and it's not in the scriptures, nor is compromise with worldly things, because once you do that, sin is in you, and it's going to spread until you stop it by burning it out. Now, how does the sin get there? And neither are human eyes. Our eyes, when you think about pride is a visual thing. It's about how one looks. It's about seeing things, so on and so forth. Think about envy. How does envy occur? Because you saw somebody with something else. How does gluttony see? You see something that you want above all others. How does lust? Think about that. 2 eyes. You think about pornography. It's now spreading to women more than anybody ever anticipated because of the prevalence of it. The eyes are the gateways to our heart. And so this is a really powerful proverb for me. I just on multiple levels. Verse 21, the crucible for silver and the furnace for gold, but people are tested by their praise. Now, this was worded weirdly. And so what they're saying here is, for gold, we know this from silver and gold, you melt it, you bang the dross out, you heat the dross out, you get all the impurities gone. But you can tell, and then you get to see this beautiful, silver and gold in its purest form. Well, you see a person in its purest form by the praise that others give them. So we see praise here again, by others that give them. You can judge that person by the praise. What do we do when we're looking at a new restaurant or like when I want to buy something? I always go to Amazon and look at the reviews. I may not buy it from Amazon, but I go to Amazon to look at the reviews on it. All right, the praises. What are the praises on it? And if it's got a lot of praises, then we'll buy it. Think about church. Well, people don't go to church because one bad review. And I think there's a meme that says that people will go to the same restaurant over and over again, despite their bad experiences, the bad reviews, or they'll abandon church for one bad review. All right, so it's something to consider. Verse 22, though you grind a fool in a mortar, grinding them like grain with a pestle, right? That's a little bowl, and you put your stuff in there and you grind it up. You will not remove the folly from them. This is something that's really important too, this verse. And so everybody's being ground by life, being tested one way or the other. But fools never have the foolishness ground out of them. Right? We can't grind the foolishness out of them. It's like an addiction. They have to let go. They have to want to choose wisdom. They have to want to seek wisdom. In the end, every single person was born a fool. We're born into sin. We're born foolish. We're born ignorant. We're born with this hole in us, and we begin to shove everything we can into it. All right. But it's not until we've gotten to a point where we're tired of that, where we're just wore out, that we begin to seek wisdom. There's got to be something else that fits in this hole. And when we begin to seek that, we will find it. Amen. Now, these last couple are going to deal with, again, work, but protection, and and it's agrarian society back then. And so let's go ahead and start chewing on that. Be sure to know the condition of your flocks. Give careful attention to your herds. For riches do not endure forever, and a crown is not secure for all generations. And so in these first two verses, we see that there's a shepherd, okay? And that herds and flocks are sheep, herds are cattle, or other animals. Those are considered wealth in the culture of that day. All right. You were wealthy if you had a lot of sheep or a lot of cattle. You were a king if people gave them to you. Kings had lots of these, but nonetheless, cattle die, herds disperse. People take them, and so they're not a set way to judge success or to base your life on it. You have to, as a shepherd, your life's a shepherd, but nonetheless, you got to keep working. All right, but it is temporary. When the hay is removed and new growth appears, and the grass from the hills is gathered in, the lambs will provide you with clothing, and the goats with the price of a field. All right. And so what we see again is the results of the hard work of being this shepherd, or herdsman. You ultimately, as you guard a fig tree, as you guard a sheep, you'll gain the fruit of the tree, you'll gain the fruit of the sheep. All right. You'll get the lamb. He'll provide you with clothing. In the right season, you'll cut the wool off. There's a term for it. I forget what it's called. You'll make clothing out of that, cloth, thread. All right. And the goats with the price of a field. Now, moving to goats, it ends with you will have plenty of goat's milk to feed your family and to nourish your female servants. And so we see again the hard work of the day it will blend results, but it's all temporary. So you have to do your best to guard it, protect it, to work for it. You can't be the fool. We've seen over and over again the fool who never plans for tomorrow. He's out there screaming, there's a lion in the street, so I'm going to stay in my bed, the bed that he never gets out of, which is sitting in front of a table that's got food in it, and he won't even feed himself or meet his needs. All right, we've seen this over and over again, who the fool is. Well, the antithesis of the fool is that hard worker who works for his family, who works to protect themselves, who works to make things, better, to provide, to live for tomorrow, plan. Amen. And so we don't worry about tomorrow, but we plan for tomorrow. You have to. Again, that's wisdom. The people who take this and say, well, you know what? I'm not supposed to worry about tomorrow, so I'll just let whatever happens, happens. No, that's not what we're called to do. We're still called to produce plans, to provide wisdom and discernment and to prepare. You have to prepare. And so we see this really consistent theme in this set of Proverbs. That's pretty powerful. Humble, friendship, hard work. And so shearing. Yeah, thank you, Audrey. I couldn't remember that word to save my life. And so, Andrew, did I say good morning? And so that's where we end today. It's a little quick one, on time for a change. Tomorrow we'll hit Proverbs 28, and we'll continue to chuck through these. As always, don't take my word. These are wisdoms that scream at me today for where I'm at in life. What are the wisdoms screaming to you? Which ones are important to your life in the season you're at? Which ones are God highlighting? Which ones is God saying, hey, listen, I need you to pay attention to this one. This one's going to be important to you. As always, you and your relationship with Christ is above all others. Amen? All right. All right. As always, I love you guys. I pray that the peace of the Lord, the peace that surpasses all understanding, the peace that allows us to be children of the book and to seek his word, the living word, and apply that word to our lives and changing it from just being knowledge to wisdoms of God himself. May that peace rest upon you and your families. And until we meet again tomorrow, may the Lord bless you and your families with safety and good health. Amen, amen, and amen. All right, brothers and sisters, you all have a great week. I'll see you all tomorrow morning. Take care.